Victoria, Matt Heisler here with another home buyer helper video, and this one is on my 5 home inspection deal breakers. So these are all items where I know that if it gets found, my deal is probably not savable. Not because the problems aren't fixable, but just because most of the time the buyers have no interest, and some of them are really difficult to fix, and it's just easier to move on. So. But if you stick around, I'll also give you 5 things that most home buyers think are deal breakers, but really aren't, and we'll talk about them a little bit too. So, but jumping right into the deal breakers, the first thing at the top of my list are raccoons. If raccoons are living in the house, uh, you know, that's a deal breaker. Okay, so unfortunately, raccoons, they tend to make latrines, which are exactly what you would think they would, but unfortunately, their feces are toxic to humans, and you need hazmat teams to go clean them up. You find raccoons in a house, that deal is dead. It's just not going to survive that. So most home buyers are not prepared to take that on, even if the seller tells them it's okay, like it's done. So mold. Now, I have mold on here, but what I really mean is extreme cases of mold. I mean mold where it requires a ton of cleanup. So, I mean, all houses have mold. So for the buyers that are out there that are thinking, I'm going to find a house without mold, I mean, unless you live in the desert, right? I mean, where I live, it rains, we have lots of water, there's mold in every house. So, but what you're really looking for is areas when I know it's a deal killer is if I go up into the attic and basically the entire attic is covered in mold. Like most buyers are just not prepared for that. They get very nervous about it, and even though it can be cleaned up, mold can be remediated in many, many ways. It's usually a deal killer. Evidence of fire. Sometimes we have home inspections, and after poking around and looking in places which are not necessarily obvious the first time you go through the house, we find evidence that the house has already had a fire. Now, most of the time it's been fixed and fixed properly, but if it wasn't disclosed by the seller that their house had had a significant fire, this usually is a deal killer. I mean, again, home buyers get very nervous about this stuff, and if they're even concerned a little bit that the house is no longer safe, they're out. Lead paint. So, I mean, most of the time, if you're looking at houses in the lead paint era, I can give you an idea of how much lead paint there is or there isn't. But every once in a while, we really haven't, the home buyer hasn't really thought about what it means to have lead paint there in terms of either cost or risk. And so, then we go and we have a lead paint inspection, and if enough lead paint comes up, it can kill an inspection. So I've even had an inspection done where the house was deemed lead safe. The only lead they found was in tiles, which are considered encapsulated, but it didn't matter anyway. The buyer walked, which again is ridiculous, but it's evident. It's just elementary of what I'm talking about here, which is that there are just some things that home buyers can't get past. And termites. Okay, I'm not talking about a little termite damage, but I'm talking about significant termite damage. And the reason is really very simple. Neither the seller nor the buyer at time of inspection have any idea how much damage there really has been. And it's because termites will do damage behind the walls. So the only way to find out is you got to open up the whole house. Most of the time what's going to happen in these situations is the deal's going to fall apart, and the seller's going to hire someone to fix it, and then they're going to put the house back on the market. That's usually what ends up happening when there's cases of termite damage. So so these will break deals. Do they have to break deals? Should you break your deal? I mean, it really depends on the issues and the level of risk tolerance that you're willing to do, and the price you're getting compensated in order to put up with those issues. I mean, I wouldn't do it for nothing. I mean, I'd do it for some level of compensation, some level of deal that I was getting in that particular transaction. Okay, so we're wrapping up here with the 5 deal breakers for this. This video ran a little long, so in the next video I'm going to talk about 5 things that come up where the home buyer almost always wants to walk away, but he really shouldn't because they aren't that serious a problem, and I'll tell you why. So stick around for that video, subscribe if you want to see it, and we'll talk to you next time.